momentum from this, and I'm happy to have Casey on the show with me today, a former IFBB professional bodybuilder, former Division I athlete playing basketball, turned holistic healer, gut specialist, and hormone specialist as well. So Casey, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited we finally made it work.
Yeah, we had a couple tries, but ended up having a new baby in there, so that changed things.
I feel like I'm kind of a good luck charm, though, in a way.
Yep, I think so.
It was like 30 minutes before we were supposed to go on last time. You're like, we're having a baby.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good excuse.
What an incredible experience that was. And the baby was born at home. I caught the baby. And
that's amazing. Okay, I haven't heard this yet.
There was zero medical intervention.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The power that the woman has to bring life into the world has been stolen again by an industry, right? We've got the birthing industry is massive, and it's taken away the power of the woman. And I think, again, that's something that women need to take back, right? You're designed to do this. You're born to procreate and bring life into the world. And we got to tap into that power again. I think it's so important.
That's why I think stuff like this is important, because people don't even understand that, they have options and,
Yeah.
So,
well, before we get into the show, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where they can find you?
Okay. Casey Shepard. I'm an integrative health coach. I work with clients all over the U.S. and the country, and even people out of country, up in Canada. I work with people overseas. I specialize in hormone balance, gut health, and just mind, body, spirit, putting it all together, but really just optimizing the body. I think when most people come to me, they're coming to me for one issue, and really they want to just hone in on that one issue. And really there could be other things that are causing that. And even if it's hormones or something else, it gets just so deep. And I think, people like Matt and myself, it's like the more we learn, it's why we get to the point we are of being so passionate about health, wellness, fitness, and the integrative side, because we realize there's so much more to just looking at one thing at a time. It gets so deep. And so it doesn't, and that's even for people that want to get into living a healthier lifestyle, more on the integrative side, is it doesn't just happen overnight. The more you start to learn and educate about it, then you kind of go down this rabbit hole. So that's why I do the kind of testing I do, the kind of healing therapies I do, is just to get to that deeper rooted part of working with people and helping them create long-term health, not just what's going to make me feel better in this moment, sort of a thing. So, but yeah, I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, at Casey Lee Shepard. I have a YouTube channel. I'm just starting to expand a lot more. My goal is to just educate as much as possible, get the information out there so people can start to dive in and look deeper into their health and start to ask those questions. For me, it's not about, just trying to pitch people to get them to work with me, but like truly learn and understand things on a different level.
Outstanding. Was this stuff that was discovered playing high-level sports and becoming a professional as a bodybuilder, or were you not aware of so much of that yet, and it's kind of something that happened after the career?
It happened over time, because I mean, as a 7-year-old, I was diagnosed with Tourette's, OCD, anxiety, depression. Finally started getting on medication at 11 years old, and it delayed my puberty, where I was almost 16. Hadn't even got my period yet. And I always hated being on meds because I hated being the kid who was like different. I felt stupid. And I was like, I don't want to be on anymore. So I slowly tapered off. And then it was, I wish I remembered the time frame, but it was shortly thereafter where my, hormones actually started kicking in, got my period. I grew like 6 inches in a summer between freshman and sophomore year of high school. And that's really when I started to accelerate as an athlete. But if I look back at a lot of the things I went through, I had asthma all through high school, struggling to play and get recruited on a national level, which I did anyways. But I do believe a lot of that was hormonal. A lot of that was gut ridden from some of the medications I had been on and some of the ways that it had suppressed my pituitary and growth hormone and a lot of things that I've been able to look back at this point. And I think it's what drew me into the bodybuilding industry, because there was just a way that my body had never felt before and something that didn't feel right or line up. So I kind of just chased the wrong avenue, not really understanding what it was yet. And I put my body through, I would say, a lot more hell than I needed to, putting myself through that, and kind of I feel wrapped up in doing that stuff for the wrong reasons. But in doing that, it helped me understand a lot more on the hormone side, on the gut side, some on the nutrition side. But when I decided to come out of it, everything was bottomed out for me. I just felt like crap. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this anymore? I'm putting myself through so much stress. I'm not happy. And so then I took, and there was times of running labs and trying to figure out stuff between. And I kept just coming back to, I guess I'll just go back to the gym or get on another diet or try to take this to combat this kind of a thing. And not all of it was, bad. Some of it was natural therapies and different things, but I just could never get the whole equation right. Yeah. But I was putting myself through this huge, stressful process in the same time, competing and, chasing the wrong things, and the mental side of it. That was just so terrible. Yeah. So it kind of finally took to getting to that bottomed out point where I was like, I'm done. I just want to feel good again. I just want to be happy with where I'm at. And then at that time, couldn't find anyone to help me. I spent thousands of dollars at doctors to get lab reports and all these things done and still couldn't find answers. I tried hiring a naturopath and spent thousands of dollars in supplements. And, there's good doctors, bad doctors, good naturopaths, bad ones. I mean, you find good and bad people in all areas, but I really had to become my own sort of science experiment. And I was forced to teach myself in that process. And it took me a lot longer, I feel, because of that. But it forced me to have to research more and dive in more and try different things and understand things on a deeper level. And I'm still learning every day. Even this last year, there's so much I've learned and been able to apply, which is why I've been able to take my body again to the next level and just continue to, what, as I always say, optimize. It's always about optimization. How do I become a healthier, better version of myself all the time without putting myself through so much more? And there is a lot you can do in that way when you start to learn the deeper stuff.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And it's it's cool because the more I learn, the more I can help more of my clients, but then also myself, my family members, my friends, and the people around me. And honestly, the more comfortable I get speaking and talking about this stuff, because you become so confident in how it works and how it carries over into so many other things.
Yeah. Well, the powerful thing that, the athletics teach you is how to continually refine, right? You practice something, improve it, practice something. So you put in that hard work to produce an end result, but you're always iterating. And it's the same thing with the human body, right? We're all going through our own life experiences with all the different things that have been fed to us when we're little, the creams, the things, the soaps, the stuff that our parents wash clothes in, all that, they impact us in all these different ways. So everybody's internal body chemistry is different, one from their design, two from what their environment has put into them. So you've got to figure out what is the right stuff for you, and you have to continually learn and iterate. And it's excellent that you're doing that. And from a foundational standpoint, what was the thing that you kind of implemented really as the thing maybe first that you noticed, really noticed this was the right thing for me to do to start the whole change process?
Yeah. I always say, I don't even remember when the last thing I wrote this was in, but I feel that this is kind of getting up more on the spiritual side, or kind of the mind, body, spirit side. But I feel like we're all here to have to work through things in a different way. And for you, it could be more the mental, spiritual alignment. For someone else, it could be having to work through things on the physical plane, whatever. I mean, for me, it was an all-encompassing thing. There were, growing up, having the OCD and the anxiety and overthinking and constantly it was more of just allowing myself to trust and understand and have the faith of like things coming together, because I would just jump the gun and do too many things and try to figure it out. And I made myself kind of crazy in the process. So some of it was learning to take a step back and like tune in a little bit and
Yeah.
doing things one step at a time, and then not over analyzing every little thing. And when you have an anxiety disorder or neurological disorder like Tourette's or whatever, and luckily for me, once I hit puberty, majority of that went away, and I still struggled with little things here and there, but I, sometimes it can be hormonal, was not over feeling, because you
Mm.
do when you're, that's what anxiety is you're overstimulated, you're over feeling, you're oversensitive. And it made me overanalyze a lot of the things I did. So a
Yeah.
lot of it was coming to the point of just surrendering and being like, this is going to be figured out. I just have to like sit back. But I do feel like, and this is why I was so key just on the hormonal side for a long time, was like, if you can push the hormones into alignment enough, then everything else will shift into alignment and into balance. And I still do believe that to be very true for the most part, but it really depends on what it was. Not all of it did, but I think working on the hormonal side for me is what made the most major shifts.
Yeah.
And I've always been someone who's sensitive to everything, medications, supplements, every little thing. And so for me, I would try things and I would quickly react or respond to them, which that was hard also.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things I really did carefully. And I had a thyroid imbalance, a hypothyroid borderline, but I couldn't even take the natural thyroid stuff. It shot my estrogen up through the roof, or it would throw my adrenals out, or whatever. And so it was like every time I would try something, my body would be like, nope. So for me, I'm like, what else can I do? And it's why I ended up exploring so many different ways to work through each issue. Like if it's
Yeah.
thyroid, or if it's this, or if it's that, and then be like, oh, I have this thyroid issue, but then my estrogen went through the roof. So why is that? Let me research what happens. And like, I really had to like understand each little way that the body acts. And especially with working with women, it's helpful because it's such a feedback loop. With men, it's a little easier. There's not as many things that can like shoot and go wrong. But I do feel like understanding the hormones and stuff was like so key. And then as I got more into the GI map testing and the hair mineral analysis testing, having understood all of the ways that things correlate, and precursors and downstream effects of different things and
Yeah.
pathways, it made understanding the gut dysbiosis and the receptors and the synergistic and antagonistic qualities of minerals and cells and how they work together so much easier. And so that's what I try to tell people is, even from my level, it seems so complex, and it is, but it works the same way on a very minute level with people learning this stuff for the first time. The more you start to learn, the more you kind of put pieces together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it makes it easier to live the lifestyle and to do, more, or to get yourself to, okay, no, now I'm going to use this detergent for my household because now I'm understanding what chemicals do with hormones. And, it just starts to build.
Yeah. The hormone thing is incredibly vital, in my opinion, because we're bombarded today with chemicals, and
Yep.
hormones are chemicals. And now that we've got something like 100,000+ new chemicals that are hitting us in our food, in our water, in the air, in the clothes we wear, from the detergents to the things they make and put on the clothes to the skin creams, and it's just
Yeah.
everywhere because we have a chemical overload causing a chemical imbalance. We have major health things that are happening because our chemical equation is off, right? if
Right.
we if we go back to high school, which I didn't pay a whole lot of attention in, and failed chemistry actually twice or once, but whatever. In that, if you have different chemicals, it produces a different reaction,
Right.
right? So if you're trying to do one thing but the chemicals aren't correct, you're going to get this different thing. And
Yeah.
that's happening inside the body right now, which from where I sit, my belief is that we are severely impacting testosterone production in men, which is leading to a lot of additional confusion and causing people to be a certain way because we've got such a hit on the testosterone, the male hormone.
Yep.
And then from the other side, we've got all these impacts on the estrogen levels and cortisol and, the different things that are impacting women's health. And they're showing up in all kinds of mental capacity, just depression, the levels of addiction, suicidal thoughts, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And if we don't fix it, then it leads to a life of sickness, which
Yep.
is ultimately very profitable for a certain industry that we call healthcare, what really is the sickness business. But if we can fix the hormone side on the one side, but even better, even go back to the root cause, let's get these chemicals out of our foods.
Yeah.
Let's get these chemicals out of our clothes, out of the things our babies sleep on, out of the formula that we feed them instead of giving them, proper breast milk, or out of our detergents and soaps and skincares and sunscreens and everything else.
Yeah.
We'll avoid a lot of the stuff on the back end with the health issues.
Yeah.
But what you're doing there with the hormones is really powerful. So how do you analyze, how do you discover kind of what's going on within the human body based on someone's hormonal profile?
It's complex because I think when you say, oh, there's hormones in the water, there's hormones in the chemicals, people don't understand what that means. And I think number one, that's a problem because it doesn't make sense to them. So they think, well, that's not, I mean, I'm fine, or it's not affecting me. But it's like everyone's heard the term xenoestrogens, and that term is what's in plastics and in the environment and in chemicals and whatever. And it's, like you said, back in chemistry, I think I got a C in chemistry in college. Like I just was so disinterested. And now I'm like, God damn it, why didn't I pay attention to that?
Yeah.
But I didn't understand how it applied. It didn't make sense in my mind. But it has to do with the chemical structure of the hormone and the receptors. And a xenoestrogen structure is so similar to that of estrogen in our body that it still fits into that receptor site the same. So these chemicals are floating around. Are they an actual hormone? No, but it's a xenoestrogen in that it so closely mimics estrogen in our bodies that it will still bind to the receptor site, and it is still acting as estrogen in our body. And when that happens, it is causing our estrogen levels to be elevated. But then you have issues with the testosterone, because then the testosterone can't bind as well, and it lowers the ability for the body to use testosterone correctly. But this is what's super interesting, is that there are women becoming more masculine and men becoming more feminine. But why is that if there's all this estrogen? And it has to do with why PCOS is such an issue now, in the way that estrogen binds and causes issues with insulin resistance. There's a hormone called SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin. And when there's issues with that, it can actually raise the testosterone in women, causing insulin issues. And it does give those masculinizing effects. But it's like, oh yeah, PCOS, you have issues with your ovaries, reproduction. You're also having insulin and blood sugar issues and imbalances, and you have testosterone issues as a woman. So you're growing hair, you're getting acne, you can't reproduce, you're not having normal cycles anymore. Men get higher estrogen, their testosterone levels are coming down. So it's kind of acting opposite in our systems, even though it's a similar hormone.
Yeah.
And so that's just like one way. And if we look at like a comprehensive blood work analysis report, we can see SHBG levels, we can see testosterone, but we can see free and total. So not just what's circulating in your system, but what are you actually using of what it is that you have and what percentage. So that's important in both men and women. What are your estrogen levels? I mean, a lot of those things. But even if we look at like a GI map stool analysis test, that's based on your body's DNA. So there are certain things like there's an enzyme called beta glucuronidase, and it's an enzyme that starts to elevate in people who have way excess estrogen in their system. And that enzyme can elevate from gut dysbiosis, an elevation of certain kinds of bacteria, issues of detoxifying in the liver, and it keeps your body from detoxing estrogen correctly. This enzyme specifically binds to toxins and estrogens and pulls it out of the body. When it's too high, your body can't do that. So we see estrogenic activity in people just from having an imbalanced gut microbiome. And that could just have started with a round of antibiotics or
Yeah.
a crappy diet, or, I mean, the list
C-section.
goes on. What'd you say?
C-section.
C-section. I mean, you can be born and pass it through a birth canal vaginally. Even you can pass bacteria to your families, certain kinds of dysbiosis and stuff. So, I mean, there's just a million ways that someone could come to the point where they're having hormone issues, or they got a parasite on vacation, or food poisoning out of the country, or even in the country, and it completely threw them for a loop. Even like I've talked to a lot of people who had like a surgery and maybe had like a metal implant or something, and they had to go on a round of antibiotics for that. But not only that, but now I pull up a hair analysis testing, because I do that. We analyze for heavy metals, mineral imbalances. It's like, why do you have high levels of titanium in your tissues?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do you have an implant? It's like, yeah, I have a metal rod in my back. I'm like, well, your cells can eat it too, like, do you have mercury dental fillings? Okay, well, that's causing a mineral imbalance that's activating your adrenals. And you know what I mean? Like, there's 5 billion things. And it's like, that's why you want to do all the testing with everyone, because you want to know exactly what's, again, the root cause. Like, will we ever know what that is? Probably not. But because there's so many different ways that this can happen, you almost have to look at it all and say, all right, if we know this and this, do this, then what do we address first? What's the highest of importance, and what's going to trickle down over into other areas to help it out without having to do all of it together? So it does get complex, and the hormone stuff gets so deep because of the way that receptors work, and the need for minerals and nutrients in order for those receptors to work properly, or for the cells to carry out the function that they need to be doing in order to deliver those hormones to where they're going to go.
So to start this all off, and like healing the gut microbiome and detoxing your system of these things that are throwing off the hormonal structure, what are some of your strategies there? Like, how do you help heal the gut? How do you help detox the body, get those heavy metals out, start removing the parasites because they no longer have a food source, etc.?
And it's different for depending on the amount of dysbiosis or what dysbiosis is going on, because there's 50 different pathogens that could be in your gut. Like, is your pancreas and your gallbladder working correctly to even give you the digestive capacity that you need, or do those need assistance? We have our commensal bacteria that are like our first line of defense in protecting our body. So if you don't have those even to begin with, it's like that starts to trickle down into getting some of the pathogens, or to having some of the gallbladder and pancreas not getting the enzymes or production that it needs in order to break the food and things down that it needs. But a lot of times it's killing off whatever would be overgrown. And if it's yeast, or if it's a parasite, or if it's a bacterial strain, I mean, you address everything very differently. But at the point where they have a lot of that stuff going on, then the gut lining is compromised in a lot of these cases, or the immune system markers are super elevated, where now they're having this internal cellular inflammation. And so we know they're not probably absorbing things correctly, whatever. But the part that's hard is that I still, as I said in the beginning, put hormones at the top of the food chain in a way of, hormones can shift DNA. Hormones can greatly shift the microbiome. Like, they've done studies on men when they hit puberty, then suddenly their microbiome changes to a very different amount than women. And that microbiome affects testosterone production or the receptor sites. And so if I like ran your levels and I saw that you had extremely low testosterone, there's a point where what's going to be the most beneficial? You probably have a lot of gut issues. Most men who have really low testosterone have a lot of gut issues. And so we could spend 6 months killing off some bacteria or trying to detoxify you, but is your system going to be under a lot of stress at the same time? Are you going to be able to even absorb and digest a lot of the food that you're intaking and get that
Yeah.
into the cell? And so there are times, and this is why I would say I'm on the integrative side, where I do feel like Western medicine has its point. And if
Yeah.
the point that we do use hormones, I'm a big believer in bioidentical, which with men's testosterone, it's a little hard to do that, but is maybe getting on a hormone of some kind, whether even if it's thyroid, or for women in menopause, estrogen, or a compounded something where it will greatly quickly shift the microbiome and the internal environment to clear a lot of that out and get it where it needs to. And then you can go in and work on repopulating the diverse commensal microbiome to get the body to be protecting where it needs to and get the nutrients into the cell where they need to. And so I think that's always the debate is, and it's going to be different with everybody you talk to. That's why someone's like, well, I worked with 2 naturopaths and it just like didn't get good results. And it's like, well, everyone's going to go about your scenario and your situation different. What do you believe is most important right now? Do you actually understand? And that's why it's so individual. I would want to know your health history. I'd want to know your symptoms. I'd want to know, a lot of those different things. And if you're looking at somebody who has low digestive capacity and they have a lot of mineral imbalances and stuff, it's like they're not even digesting and absorbing. They're extremely malnourished. And even if I put this
Yeah.
person on a diet the next 6 months, they're going to feel like crap because they can't absorb any of it.
Yeah.
And so what's going to benefit this person the most, the quickest off the bat? And so it's hard. I mean, it's a case by case
So
scenario.
it all starts with testing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in the perfect world, I would just do all of it with everyone that comes in. But, people don't want to put the money down to do all of it, which is fine. But then you have to say, we got to look at what could be the most important thing that we do right now if you can't do it all. And that's where my job becomes hard because it's like, then I'm still, you're still guessing to a certain extent of
Yes.
what's going to be the best and most beneficial. So,
So is the hair the primary tool that you use, or is it something else?
yeah, yeah, and it's so the hair. It's called HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis testing. And we do actually take a sample of the hair at the root,
Okay.
and it's only like a small amount, but then it's analyzed. So it's the best way to test what's getting into the actual tissues. And what your body's actually absorbing. Because if we look at a blood work, you could have circulating minerals in the blood, which most of the time they take anytime you go to the doctor, whatever. But it doesn't mean that's what your tissues are actually absorbing correctly and utilizing. And so it's just a better way of it's like a 3 month or so snapshot
Okay.
of what's in the tissues. But it's a way better way to test for heavy metals. So whether you have like long-term exposure, like especially if you're a smoker or you vape or you've been exposed to smoke all your life, or even you can get some of that stuff from water supply if you've had a lot of vaccinations or you have metal cavity fillings. We see that show up in the tissue. And even for people who had maybe their metal fillings removed 2 years ago, unless you chelate that out, it'll still showing up in your body.
Yeah. I've got a company that I love and I'm working with that has a nanozeolite C plasma product they call Masterpiece, and they're working with someone in the European Union. He's the longest running hair analysis specialist,
Okay.
and he's been working with Masterpiece and some of their customers, and they're doing the hair testing and checking it kind of monthly. And he's seeing a tremendous amount of people that are using this product. Their hair has 1,400% increase in aluminum in it. And what it's showing them is that the zeolite is actually able to effectively bind to these heavy metals
Okay.
and pull them out of the body, because we can't break down zeolite. It's a negatively charged ion. It attracts the positive things, which is usually the heavy
What
metals.
the C stuff you were telling me about before, like that's
Yeah, it's
okay.
called Masterpiece, and it's phenomenal.
Okay.
And they've been doing these studies, and they've got papers being, they're doing the work to make sure that what they're doing can be effectively backed up in a big way. And the point of what I'm saying is, there's ways to remove these things from the
Yeah.
system, which you're
Yeah.
well aware of, and we got to get them out. The heavy metals are a food for parasites. People don't realize this, but the parasites will, eat the heavy metals, and then they're putting all kinds of toxins into your system through their excrement and whatnot. But if you get their food out, the parasites die and are eliminated too. And there's some belief, at least less that I've heard in the past few years, about how parasites are really the largest contributor to cancer formation.
Yeah.
I can't say that's true or not, but that's definitely something I'm hearing a lot more alternative medicine practitioners and doctors who have kind of saw the light, so to speak,
Yeah.
be talking about.
Well, and the parasite thing is, I think it's become like a TikTok thing where everyone's like, I'm going to do a parasite cleanse, and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you could have parasites, or you could have 500 other pathogens in your body. Like, the one thing I will say though is, like, some of this stuff can be great to do no matter what. Like, maybe you
Yeah.
have a parasite, maybe you don't. It's some of it can't hurt, but when I do some of the GI map tests and we test for specific things, it's rarely a parasite, but maybe that's just the ones I've done. You know what I mean? Like, I found one last month. But a lot of times it's just overgrowth of bacteria strains. And like the other day, there was
Are the parasites getting into the intestinal tract the same way? Or are they living in the body in different areas?
they can be all over. You can have them in
Yeah.
the brain, you can have them whatever. I mean, you could get it from your normal water supply, or going to the pool, or like Giardia is like from your dog. Like, if
Oh
you have
yeah,
a
yeah. People
dog,
that have dogs are very, very high risk of parasites.
yeah, I mean, your dog could step in another dog's poop and walk into your house, and
Yep.
it doesn't kill it with bleach. Like, you can't, like, a lot of parasites don't die from bleach. So I mean, there's just a million things. If you have any symptoms, I mean, it could be bacteria, it could be yeast, it could be a virus, it could be, but we test for all of it. And specific, what specific one is it? I mean, parasites range all over the place, and you treat them all in a different way.
Yeah.
And on the heavy metal side, I do think that stuff sounds interesting, and it would be interesting to try to use it and just test it at some point.
Yeah,
But
that'd be awesome.
yeah, with the hair analysis stuff, I feel like we talked about this before, but if you have certain heavy metals that are bound, there's something called ionic mimicry. And it is when the heavy metals bind to receptors, sites for where minerals are supposed to be. And whether you were just deficient in specific minerals, or you had an overexposure to certain heavy metals, it doesn't matter which one. But if let's say you're so deficient in like magnesium, there will be like a specific heavy metal that will bind to the magnesium receptor in order to like keep it alive. Like, your cells need something there, and because there's such a similarity between metals and minerals, your body may start to accumulate heavy metals onto that receptor site because it has been so deficient for so long. So it's almost like a protective thing.
Yeah.
So a lot
Yeah.
of people think like, oh well, I don't have mercury because I don't have heavy metals, whatever. Well, yeah, but your body still might grab onto and hold every ion it gets because it's so deficient. And so that's the other thing, is like, you can chelate heavy metals, but you better also know that if you have a deficiency, that what needs to be balanced out from a mineral level, because some people feel worse once they chelate because they're not replacing it with the minerals that are like super deficient
Yeah.
and
Right.
low. But it's also another way to detox those and chelate those minerals, is because your body will grab onto those minerals the second they're there.
Mm,
And it's like calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Those are the four main minerals that have to be balanced in order for cells to function. All the other
yeah,
ones kind
yeah.
of balance out from there. And so, I mean, that's basic chemistry stuff too. Um, but I think that's the only thing I have to say about the chelating stuff. That otherwise that stuff is, I think that stuff is amazing for people to use if they know they have something in there or whatever. And there's certain chelators that I think are better than others. I would have to look at what he's found it works the best for. Has he found like certain metals that you said aluminum was one?
Well, just heavy metals in general.
Okay.
Really all the positively charged ions being removed out of the
Okay.
system.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's fascinating. Zeolite's something that I've looked into for years and have used, and now they're advancing it. Right, it's now they're getting it down to the nano size, so it's actually able to pass into the blood-brain barrier, be able to pull out metals from the brain, and just do all kinds of things, which is powerful and heavily needed. I think there's a lot of the heavy metals are, like neurotoxins a lot of
Yeah.
the time, right? So you end up in a situation. That's funny.
That's hilarious.
So the reality is these things are harming our body. They weren't designed into the system to begin with, and they're now in us in a big way, and they're wreaking havoc on the systems.
Yeah.
So
I think
getting
it would be
that.
interesting. I don't know that if I know the exact studies between, the heavy metals in the gut, but there is a correlation in a lot of ways with some of the dysbiosis and stuff. And,
Yeah.
you kind of just start to see how it all works together because of the hormonal side and,
Yep.
you know,
You hear a lot about people that have done things with their children who have been diagnosed as autistic, and they've gone and healed the gut health, and or gone and improved the gut health, healed the guts, that might balancing that microbiome out, and they see huge improvements in that child.
yeah,
So I have serious belief that a lot of our issues kind of start there, right?
yep,
The gut health and the proper balance of that microbiome. If it's off, there's challenges,
yeah,
and there's an interesting tie over into soil health. Right, that soil health is a massive microbiome too, and it's ultimately what really transfers nutrients from soil into the plant life.
yeah,
The healthier the microbiome in the soil, the healthier the plant, the healthier the food it produces, the healthier the human, right? And same with the animals.
Well, and I think there's all the talk about, organic food and pesticides, but like you've kind of showed me it starts even deeper than that, like at the soil. What is the plant actually getting and utilizing? Because that is a big issue here as our soils changed. And one of the big things I'm passionate about is high dose iodine and iodine that
Yeah.
our body needs. And you see how different the soil is on the coast versus what they call the goiter belt of the Midwest because of
Yeah.
the thyroid issues, because we don't have the iodine and a lot of the minerals in our soil and growing the plants. And so, have you seen anything like that, like correlate with some of the stuff you guys do?
Honestly, I have not, but that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Um, hasn't been something that I've necessarily asked for. So now that I'm aware of that, I'm gonna definitely have it on my radar and talk about it when appropriate.
Well, and I don't even, I mean, I guess that's different than the microbiome of the soil and that kind of thing, but I don't
Mineral
know if
content of the soil is
yeah, I don't
impacted.
know if it's
So
the minerals that get into the soil or if it's actually like on the plants or, I mean, how that necessarily correlates. But I just remember when I was David Brownstein, I don't know if you know Dr. Brownstein, but he's the one who does all the iodine stuff. It's just like one of his like big points about,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, it's powerful stuff. And the fascination, at least with me, for the body's ability to heal itself when provided everything it needs and the ideal environment is created, I think is one of the greatest things hidden from us. right? Because there's not money in it the same way if people are living in optimal health. And although there probably is, it's just you've got this embedded industry that makes money from sickness.
Yeah.
Whereas the thing I love about the wellness industry is that, the sickness side, you take things out of fear. The wellness side, you take things out of confidence and your own desire and your want to be
Because you
better.
understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would argue there's probably more money there. I could be wrong, but because people want to be well and function optimally and full of health and extend their longevity, like they want to live longer, healthier, that they would spend more money on a month-to-month basis to do so.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
Not
you and I
because
were
they're
talking
afraid.
about this when we first connected was
Yeah.
like what I don't like about the integrative or the holistic side is that people just say, "Oh, you're crunchy or you're granola or you're holistic." I'm like, if anyone looks at me, I know I'm not I'm not that way, but I do feel like there are certain key things like the issue that I hate is when people are like, well, you're designed to detox. Your body's designed to heal. It's supposed to. I'm like, yes, it's supposed to, but it's not anymore because of all these things. And we're never going to be able to control the air quality and all the things that we're breathing in. We're always going to be getting some of that. And so we have to make sure that our bodies are doing what they are designed to do by getting in the right nutrients, the right minerals, making sure our gut is functioning the right way so that when we do get hit with the outside things or we're not being perfect on other things, that our body is metabolizing it in the best way possible and that we're getting it out. And because the food is our source of life and our water, like that is one of the major foundations of doing it. Well, yeah, when you have somebody who has all this disease and there's a million other things going on, they might not be focused on the soil of where their food is from because they're so ill at that point. But to me, that's what people who are normal day to day should be focusing on. And it's the negative is that a lot of people don't start focusing on their health until they get something disastrous going on or they become unwell. And then they start to do it. And so I don't want to deter people away from starting to understand some of this stuff, even if it seems too far out of reach for them at this point. Because as we've talked about before, the more you understand about some of this stuff, the more you can think about it and start to implement things, which all does make a huge difference. And then you may get to the point where you decide to do more about it, or, like the stuff that you're doing with, helping people grow their own food systems and develop, even in the long run for them, it's cheaper, I would think.
Yeah, it's an asset.
Yep,
asset at home that produces value for them.
Yeah, because I think the way that I used to look at like holistic people back in the day was I was just like, I'm never going to live like that. I'm never going to live off the grid and be crunchy and do all the things. But that doesn't, just because some people live that way doesn't mean that you can't implement a lot of the things that they're doing to be healthier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And who knows where you'll be at some point, maybe you will want to at some day.
Yeah. I never thought I would want to, and now I want to.
Yeah.
But, things change and people can change, go right along with them.
Totally.
Exciting times, truthfully, there's a massive newfound awareness of the natural ability for the body to heal. We all kind of know it's there, but again, it's been kind of conditioned out of us. And we rely so heavily on our doctor to care for our health when the doctor isn't caring for your health. They're caring for their own pocketbook.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. These are great people with great intentions, but they've gone through a system that is owned and operated by the sickness business. So, no wonder. But, at the end of the day, the population is opening their eyes. They've saw the corruption. They've saw the injuries. They've saw family members go through things and not have a solution. And, eventually the lies come out and the great news is we're smart. Human capacity is always improving, though we've been dumbed down as, our food dumbs us down, or there's all these things that are in our life that have an effect on us in that way. But there's still that resiliency, and the open mind still exists. And as long as we can help continuing to open minds and create more awareness is what leads to change.
Yeah.
So excellent what you're doing. It really is powerful work, and I commend you for that. And thank you for, taking that part seriously, right? You're doing something that's very valuable for people, and you've clearly educated yourself, continue to educate yourself, doing excellent work. And I love it. Love it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean,
You're very
it's
welcome.
complex stuff, but you're never going to find one answer for anything out there. And I think that's what I try to tell people. I mean, I worked with so many different people and continue to put the pieces together. And like my journey is going to be different than yours or someone else's for whatever gets them to full health or to finally understand things in a certain way. And so I think the biggest thing is stuff like we're doing is educating people, helping them look deeper, helping them to think differently about the choices they're making, and then they can come to their own conclusions and look into it more. But something that you and I are talking about may click with someone in a different way that it never has. And I think that's the important part is like, none of any one of us have all the answers, but like keep educating yourself on this stuff and looking deeper,
Yeah. So to wrap up today, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. Is there anything you'd like to say? Final thoughts?
No, I don't think. I feel like I just shared my final thoughts.
All right.
Educating.
And where can people find you? Let everybody know again.
You can find me on my website, spectrumwellness.biz, B-I-Z. Casey Lee Shepherd on all my platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, CASIE. And I have a link tree in my bio for my Instagram, which I have like all of my links and stuff on there for my website.
Okay.
And anyone who's interested in my services, I can work with people in Canada. I can work with people in other countries. You have to check with me first on some of the testing stuff, but I'd even just be willing to have a chat with anyone who wants to see if it's a good fit or not.
Yeah.
So
love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We do have all of the social handles, your website, everything in the show description. So thank you so much, Casey, for joining us today. Thank you to our audience. What a great episode of Seeds of Abundance. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
This show is officially over. Have a great day.